OutfitR sent me another bike rack to review, and it's designed specifically for families with one e-bike and several regular bikes. So the struggle I think a lot of people have right now is when you have a family that has a lot of bikes, a lot of heavy bikes, or maybe an e-bike, hanging bike racks can't really handle the weight of e-bikes. And then if you're looking for a vertical style rack, those get really expensive really quick, and so do extending out traditional four bike tray racks. There's this option from OutfitR which seems to solve those problems pretty well. Let me put it together and I'll talk more about it. As far as assembly goes, this thing came together pretty well. It was packaged incredibly well, nothing came scratched, and honestly everything was pretty well labeled. Yeah, here's all the parts laid out on the ground. Looks pretty good so far. Instructions were well written. There's pictures for almost everything. So I first attached the T-bar to the hitch. I did this by putting the tilt adjust pin in first, and then the threaded rod that connects them and acts as the pivot point. Then they recommend just installing it on your car at this point, but before you slide it onto your hitch, you want to make sure you install the additional hitch stabilizer. Then you'll want to install the threaded rod that connects the hitch to the rack. Then you throw a cotter pin at the end, and then you can tighten down the additional hitch stabilizer. I did a little bit on each side to make sure one side of the hitch didn't get extra load than the other. Then you want to slide these, I'm going to call them square bolts, I'm pretty sure that's what they're called, but I'm not 100% sure, onto the underside of the tray. Then install the tray and lining up those bolts with the holes on the T-bar. And do that for both trays. Then I used my drill with a 13mm socket and tightened everything down to the specified torque. After that, I cracked loose the bolts on the end of the trays to install the front wheel cradles. I really like on this one how where they could pre-install the hardware for you, they did. This was really convenient for me because I have a habit of losing my tools and losing small parts. So this was really convenient to just have those pre-installed. Now there are two different widths of front wheel trays. So the narrower wheel tray goes with the narrower tray, and the wider tray goes with the wider tray. Then you want to install the seat post grabber, but actually it looks like I installed these backwards on the first try, so I gotta just flip them around so everything lines up the right way. And now with those flipped around, I'm gonna retighten everything and install the seat grabber. You want to install one plastic shim on the back side, one on the front side, and then the steel plate that holds it all together. Then I tightened this down with a 17mm socket, and then I did the same for the front tray. Now for the two-bike extension. This one came together almost exactly the same as the first one, so I'm just going to time-lapse through the assembly. And then these connect with a single bolt at the end of the base rack. And it's actually kind of convenient how quick to disconnect that rack is. Then you can start loading bikes. Then you want to put the bike on the rack, tighten the straps, and then load the next bike. One thing I noticed is that you kind of just have to make sure all the seats are down before you start loading, but that's kind of true with any tray rack these days. Then you load bike number 3, secure all the straps, and then you can load bike number 4 and secure all the straps. Now that the trays are loaded, everything's put together, let me go for a drive. I'll tell you more about it. First off, the modularity is the big thing that I think is cool about this rack. It connects with one pin at the top of the base rack and holds it really securely with just a single pin. One side there's a hole bigger than the other, which allows the bolt to the top of the threaded rod to countersink in so it can pull everything a little tighter together. Then you can tighten that bolt with a 17mm wrench and a 10mm Allen key. I really like the modularity of this rack, mainly for two reasons. About 2/3 of the time, I'm realistically only carrying 1 or 2 bikes at a time. That big capacity is really nice because I tend to be really hard on my cars and my racks, so it's kind of nice to have something that's a little bit extra stable. But then when I go out with friends or I'm bringing my dad and my sister, on a ride, it's kind of nice to just have 4 bikes so then nothing has to get crammed into the car, which I think is why they market it for families. I invited my friends Connor and Ryan to ride with me and my sister, use this bike the way a normal person would use it, and it performed pretty well. And this is how you and your friends and family could look if you buy this rack. Moving on. As far as stability goes, this thing does pretty well. So in that first clip, all the stability is turned off. The first thing you want to do to turn on the stability is to crank down that threaded bolt for the hitch all the way. And then you want to give a couple turns on each of the stabilizer bars. So the threaded rod stabilizes X dimension, and then the extra stabilizer bar at the bottom of the hitch that stables up and down movement. And then lastly, you want to tighten this nut on the underside of the tilt adjuster. This pushes the rack against the tilt adjust pin so that, there isn't really any play anywhere. On the first drive I was a little bit nervous because I've never really driven with this many bikes on the back of a car. The most I've done is 3, and this is certainly the most amount of weight I've driven with. Despite my fears, it performed fairly well. The max capacity I had it at was about 170 pounds of weight, so that's with 1 e-bike and 3 regular bikes, and I think that's about as much weight as most regular people would carry. It remained fairly stable going over this highway bridge that's been under construction for the last 4 years, and along this rough forest preserve road that actually I don't think has been maintained in a long time. And I was going way too fast for that road, and it actually held up fairly well. I even found some speed bumps at the top of the parking garage with almost no flex, and same with this curb going up this driveway, it did really well there too. And with these train track crossings, and yeah, it barely moved the whole time. So I don't really know how else to say it, but the stability works really well. Also got some features of the rack that didn't really fit into a specific category, but I definitely want to make sure I mention. This thing does have a tilt feature. There's a big long pin you pull at the T-bar that can allow you to raise the rack to the vertical position so you can fit back into your garage. Carrying capacity for each tray was a little bit confusing for me, so I ended up emailing the manufacturer and they cleared some things up for me. The first tray can handle 100 pounds of bike. The second tray can handle 100 pounds of bike. And then the 2 outer trays can handle 50 pounds of bike each. I know those numbers add up to 300, but the total capacity for the rack is only 250. If you want to add a ramp to this rack, you can. However, only the first tray has the hooks for the ramp. So if you do want a ramp for this, it's only going to work with the first tray. All the features of the rack covered, I want to share my personal opinions about this rack. Number 1, I really don't think you could find a better 4-bike rack with this kind of capacity for a better price. If you're looking for a bike rack that can handle even at least 200 pounds, you're looking at pretty much a minimum of $1,000 when you factor in the base and then the add-ons. So I think it's really cool that this one starts at $600. Also, if we're going for looks, this thing looks really awesome. I love all the chunky aluminum that's been really well painted, and just really makes your car look cool. I even took several pictures of my mom's Subaru and my Oldsmobile, and honestly with all those bikes and this chunky aluminum rack, I think this is the best my car and my mom's Subaru has ever looked. Another benefit of the modularity is this thing fits a little bit nicer in your garage, because this 4-bike rack is huge, and the fact that you can just split it in half makes it so much easier to store. And I think that's a benefit that I think a lot of people will appreciate. Also, another improvement I've noticed with the stabilizer is that the threaded rod that goes into the hitch seems to be machined significantly better than the last few. So it's kind of nice that I can thread it most of the way in by hand, and I didn't need a wrench to tighten it all the way, just that little bit at the end. However, there's a few things about this rack that I don't quite like. Firstly, being the slots at the top and the bottom of the trays. These seem to collect water after I left the rack on my car in the rain, and I'm a little bit worried that it might rust or corrode the steel and aluminum and wear out the rack a little faster than maybe it could have lasted. Also, the additional hitch stabilizer seemed to kind of solve one of the issues I had with the previous stabilizer. In the previous review, I mentioned that the rack tends to flop up and down a little bit, but this extra stabilizer seems to prevent that fairly well. and I like that it's made it more stable. However, it does add time to assembly and takedown, but I guess that's the price to pay for extra stability. So in summary, if you're looking for a 3 or 4 bike rack that can handle an e-bike, and you need it, and you have a whole lot of bikes, this is a great rack for you, because it's less expensive than some of the alternative brands and is more stable than a hanging bike rack. And it's great for families, it's great for events, great for just taking people out and exploring new mountain biking trails. So if you like this rack and you want to buy it, check the link in the description. There's a discount code down there that should get you about 15% off your purchase, so which can already even more decrease the price on this already super affordable rack. Then also, if you do use that discount code, I get a little bit of kickback for making the video. If you're curious about other OutfitR racks at this more entry-level price point, got a whole playlist about them, so make sure to check those out up here. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.